All right, we're here. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar from Attentive and Imperity. Before we get started, we've got a couple housekeeping items. First, this is being recorded, so the recording will be made available to all of you and shared out in like the next few days. Number two, all the attendees, you're all on mute right now, but we do want this to be as interactive as possible. So at any time, if you've got a question, within the webinar box, you'll see a Q&A box that you can submit your question. All right, I'm Brian Shumsky. I'm head of strategic partnerships lead at Imperity. I'm going to moderate our discussion today between our two experts. I'm joined by Margaret Gorin, first from Imperity. Margaret, do you want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about Imperity as well?
Sure, yeah, great to be here. So I'm Margaret Gorin. I lead our business value consulting practice at Imperity. So my job is to really help brands kind of connect the dots between how our technology supports different use cases and drives business impact. A little bit about Imperity. I kind of think about Imperity as almost like a supply chain for your customer data. So same way with, oil, right? It starts as crude oil in the ground and you've got to drill for it and get it to a refinery and then send it through a whole network of pipelines so it actually gets to the gas stations where you make money. That's what we do for data, right? We ingest all of your raw customer data. We bring it to the refinery, and our refinery is really unique, multi-patented. We use machine learning to resolve identities in a really kind of unique way. We consolidate C360 profiles on your customers, enrich those profiles, and allow you to activate them in all of your different marketing channels, do things like A/B testing, predictive modeling, and really kind of improve the customer experience at every touch point.
Cool. Thank you, Margaret. Margaret Mester, could you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about Attentive?
Yeah, hi everyone. Super excited to be here. I am Margaret Mester, so I'm the second Margaret. I have been at Attentive now for almost 4 years. Attentive is the leading text message marketing platform. We drive about 20.5% of online revenue for our companies by creating personalized and meaningful experiences that brands and their subscribers can have together. I have been on the client strategy team at Attentive since I've started, and I'm currently a client strategy enablement lead. So I work on, creating the resources and materials and providing the training for our client strategists or people with a book of business to, to really enable our clients. So it's kind of meta, but yeah.
Cool, perfect. All right, let's jump in. So our topic today is using SMS and first-party data to maximize holiday revenue. So why does that matter, right? So today's consumers, right, they have more options than ever for their holiday shopping. Every brand's competing for their attention this season, and to succeed, brands need to effectively leverage data to personalize messages and offers, determine optimal targeting strategies, and ensure a frictionless experience at every touch point. So Margaret and Margaret are going to cover what you should be doing before holiday, during holiday, and also things you should be considering after holiday. So also very important. Okay, so let's go with before holiday. Margaret from Attentive. So a simple question, when does holiday start? Or maybe more specifically, when should a brand start thinking about sending their first holiday-focused message?
Yeah, we get this question a lot from our customers, and I think it's no surprise to any of us that the holidays are starting earlier and earlier. It'll be October, one of us will walk into a department store and see like a cardboard cutout Santa, and I think that is true on a larger level as well, which is why I bring that up. Last year, by the time we got to Black Friday, Cyber Monday, November spending was up 14% from the year before, just across the board. And so I think why I say that is, for text message marketing, we typically recommend that a brand send their first holiday integrated message probably the first week of November to really kind of keep up with those shifting consumer trends. So that could be, a gift guide, a holiday bundle, or a head start sale, but really starting to kind of integrate that holiday messaging then. The other thing, though, is that just because a brand is starting their holiday messaging then, doesn't mean that a consumer isn't going to be shopping for the holidays earlier. So there was a Salesforce survey done, and 37% of shoppers said that they do plan to be, buying gifts even earlier this year. So I think that just goes to show that, like, all sales and all just like big days coming up for a brand, even now and through November, are still fair game for holiday shopping. That doesn't necessarily mean that a brand should, start talking about the holidays now, but it still could be really big for revenue.
That's cool. I'm definitely a gift guide kind of guy. I'm very grateful when I get those. Very helpful. Margaret Gorin, any thoughts there?
Yeah, for sure. I am one of those people that when I walk into the department store in October and I see the cardboard cut out of Santa, I get really freaked out, and I'm like,
Same.
no, too early. And I think what that shows you is, obviously marketing, the three things, right? It's right message, right place, right time. And the whole goal of personalization is to really go one-to-one with your customers on each one of those. And when you think about holiday, right time is still really important to personalize. And the right time to start shopping is different for different customers, right? You have customers that really like to get ahead, right? They want to have all of their, gift purchases bought maybe even before Thanksgiving. You've got your Black Friday shoppers, and then you've got those last minute gift buyers, right? So Brian, right? I thought you might be one of those. And so you don't want me to be turned off by sending me a message in October, but you do want to be reaching out to somebody else who does want to shop in October. So how do you do that? You look at the data, right? And you can actually, using a CDP or sort of a unified customer data foundation like Amperity, we can tell you exactly when different types of shoppers start to shop for holiday. We can look at who are the folks who shopped during that season last year, who actually bought gifts. We can tell you that, right? Because we can look at, for example, the discrepancy between the shipping and billing. And we can say, hey, we're seeing kind of three major archetypes, and then assign customers to those and say, okay, for those early shoppers, we're going to start reaching out to them in October. For the Black Friday folks, that's really when we're going to start the push there. And then for the last minute folks, we're really going to focus more on sort of the December timeframe.
Very good. Let's see. For our next question, Margaret from Imperity, let's stick with you. So like many brands right now, they're probably finalizing their paid media budgets for holiday. How should they be thinking about allocating channel spend during this time?
Yeah, so it's a great point, and we definitely see brands making more of a push into every single one of the channels that are kind of at their disposal during holiday, right? That's really when we see folks allocating extra budget to some of those more expensive channels. And the way that we would recommend brands think about it is to make sure that it's complementary and that it's not just like you are completely inundating your customers in a way that might not be constructive with them, they might not like it. But that also you might be potentially wasting money because not everybody necessarily needs or deserves to be getting hit in every single paid channel, right? So you can do things like, look at all of the different channels you have and understand which of those channels bring in your high value customers. That's a bit of a different lens than just looking at what's the sort of conversion rate by channel. You might have channels that are really high conversion rate, but they tend to bring in one and done or low value shoppers. And so from a macro perspective, you want to be shifting your investment into the channels that during the holiday season specifically, and again, we can help you look at that, tend to bring in the highest value customers. And then you want to start being able to orchestrate journeys and campaigns that really help you with that channel optimization piece, right? So be able to do things like segmenting customers and kind of have a sequence where you might start in kind of a lower cost channel like an email or an SMS. And then if they're not responding in those channels, then you start to layer in some of the more expensive touch points. You also want to be able to do things like suppression so that you're not wasting money, right? If you have somebody, for example, who just bought $1,000 worth of gifts at your brand yesterday, they're probably not going to do that again tomorrow. So why are you paying to hit them in Facebook and Google? And then we start to think about some of the most expensive channels, things like direct mail. Everybody knows, right, that traditionally you want to be really focusing direct mail on your most valuable customers. That's nothing new. That's where RFM modeling was born, right, in catalog mailers. But RFM is a little bit 20th century, right? 21st century, we look at things like predicted lifetime value, where you're not just looking at who spent the most in the past, but really what your algorithms or predictive models can tell you would be your customers who are predicted to spend the most money in the future.
Margaret Nestor, how about specifically in the SMS channel? Any more insights to share?
Yeah, totally. The beauty of SMS is that we do see really high value customers, and I think this is just year round, but during the holidays, it's super true. There's definitely more money and more revenue to be made during the holidays. But on the spend side, there's also more to spend, right? And so last year, what we saw is that in November and December, an average marketer spent about 25% of their total annual spend during those 2 months, which just goes to show like there is more to spend. But on the flip side, right, they made 30% of their total annual revenue in those 2 months. The return is there. So I think that's just really important when you're thinking about, okay, how important are the holidays for my my spend and my revenue? They're very important, especially with SMS. What that actually looks like on a text messaging basis is, typically year round we say, okay, send about 1 to 2 messages a week to your list. Obviously, you might segment a bit. It really depends on the messaging, but that's kind of the standard. Once we get to the holidays, especially the big weeks, like Cyber Week, the week leading up to Christmas, we will start to see brands send 4 to 5 messages to their list. And, I know that sounds like a lot, but we haven't seen opt-outs meaningfully increase with those really big weeks when you are sending more frequently. It's really only when you're starting to send your full list every single day, weeks in a row, that you're going to start to see opt-outs meaningfully increase. So that I'm not saying to start sending 4 to 5 messages a week now, but in those big weeks, it's totally acceptable. Maybe obviously thinking about suppressing people, to Margaret's point, who have just purchased and made really big purchases and that sort of thing, who aren't going to purchase again, a day later.
Yeah. And if I could just quickly piggyback on that as well, I think another way that like an Amperity and an Attentive can work really well is we can tell you out of your customers who are the ones who are most likely to be more highly engaged, right, in SMS. And so if you are going to be leaning in really heavily in some of those weeks and sending 4 or 5 messages, but you're worried that there might be a subset of customers that are not as engaged and won't like to receive that frequency, we can sort of help with the segmentation and Attentive to really focus on those high frequency customers and make sure that we can help minimize the opt-outs.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's great. Right, we're talking about sort of your pre-holiday planning, and we just covered a lot of great points on the sort of the strategy side. But from maybe a technology perspective, Margaret from Amperity, is there anything brands should be doing to ensure their readiness from the tech side of the equation?
Yeah, so I have a lot of conversations with brands at different points in the year and around implementing a platform like Amperity and the timeline that takes. And what I usually tell folks is if you want to be live for holiday, that needs to be really by the summer if you're implementing a new piece of technology. And the reason for that is you don't want to be going into the holiday season using something that hasn't been fully tested and QA'd, especially during these sort of high volume times of year. And so even if you do get a new piece of technology stood up by August, September, October, you want that to sort of be live for several months before you're comfortable really having that be part of your core stack for holiday. So then you want to look at, okay, what are the pieces of technology that are kind of firmly implemented, that are tried and tested, and how are we making kind of the most out of those investments during holiday, right? So I see this all the time. Brands will invest in these best-in-class platforms that have all these features that you might not even be using yet for whatever reason, right? So this is the time to be really understanding what is the art of the possible with those tools. Great example of this. I talked a little bit just now about kind of using an Amperity and Attentive together. Great example of if you have tools in your stack that have connectors to each other that can integrate with each other, but for whatever reason you haven't implemented that integration yet, get that done now so that you can do things like what we're talking about, right? So that you can take your data and hydrate it to all of your different channels like Attentive and really kind of get that 1 + 1 = 3 with all the different tools in your stack.
Great. Margaret Nestor, how about on the Attentive side?
Yeah.
Technically, what should you be thinking about?
Yeah, absolutely. On the SMS side of things, it's really about growing and building a strong subscriber base leading up to the holidays, so that you can maximize revenue during the holidays. So what does that look like? Just, tactically, I'd say the first thing is right now being very vigilant with list growth, being sure to implement on-site capture units on your mobile and desktop sites where you're going to see the most traffic. Even bridging your digital channels by leveraging a landing page, an email, or social to then get those people to sign up for SMS. So I think really expanding your reach and making sure that you are growing your subscriber base now. It sounds like obvious, but if you don't have any subscribers, then your messages are, you don't have anyone to send a message to during the holidays. So it really is important forming, the foundation of a successful program year round, but especially during the holidays when there is, more revenue to be made. So that's the first thing. And I'd say the second thing, for SMS, is going to be sending messages to your list now on a regular cadence, kind of priming your list so that they are aware of the value of SMS. They're expecting messages from you. And, ultimately, you don't want Black Friday to be the first message you send to these people just because you're going to see huge opt-out rates, right? Like you want to kind of start sending them now to really build that strong subscriber base. But I'd say more importantly, and this kind of goes to Margaret's point, where you want to know your subscribers. You want to know what they engage with, what resonates with them, who is going to click on, a link to a blog post versus who is really interested in those sales and the discounts. Because the more data you have on your subscriber base, ultimately, the better you can then segment and target during the holidays to really increase, conversion rate and revenue. So I think that's a big one as well. It's just sending messages now so that you know who your subscribers are when the holidays come around.
That's great. Great pre-planning, right? Acquiring subscribers, priming the pump, getting them ready. So now let's pivot a little bit. Let's talk about what our audience can do sort of during the holiday. What are some best practices in holidays so you are personalizing holiday messages and offers sort of appropriately? Margaret from Imperative, could you take that?
Yeah, sure. So personalization, obviously something that's very top of mind for all the brands that we work with. And it's not easy. Everyone knows this. It's been the buzzword now for how long? And we still work with a lot of brands that are still, essentially batch and blast. So all throughout the year, right, personalization is a challenge, really understanding who those customers are, having the right data on them. It's even harder in holiday. And the reason why personalization is even harder in holiday is during the year, if I'm your customer, you're trying to figure out what I'm most likely to buy. During holiday, I might not be the end customer. You might be marketing to me, but I'm likely buying for my husband or my uncle or my mother-in-law or my sister. And they have very different purchase patterns that I do. So if, rest of the year, let's say I'm a women's wear shopper, maybe during holiday, I'm an accessories and menswear shopper. And you have to figure out what is that sort of difference in persona during the holiday season, which is not easy to do. One of the things that you can do is understand for your customers who are gifters, again, we can tell you who your gifters are. How do they purchase differently when they're sending a gift, right? What are the different categories or subcategories that they're shopping in? What are the different channels that they're shopping in? You can also do things like householding, and this is really cool. Some of the power of having that C360 view. If both myself and my husband are customers of your brand, right? For example, let's take J. Crew. My husband and I both shop at J. Crew throughout the year. During holiday, Amperity can tell you that we are in the same household. And when J. Crew markets to me, they can look at that other person in my household, my husband, and send me gift guides around the kinds of things that he's either likely to buy based on his purchase behavior or that he's browsing or opening emails about. So it's really about kind of tailoring that personalization to the end recipient of the product.
It's really interesting. Margaret Nestor, any thoughts there?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's so neat that the household thing. I love that. With SMS, I think the first way to personalize, just piggybacking off of what Margaret said, is by leveraging subscriber data and insights, right? So the more you know about a subscriber's purchasing habits and just what they're interested in, and that you can, and you can pull that onto a subscriber's profile, the better you can then target and personalize, especially during the holidays when again, the shopper may not be the person who's using the product or whatever it is. And so, leveraging zero-party, first-party data is a way to do that with, again, the Attentive and a Parity integration. It's a really neat way to pull in that first-party data on a subscriber and then send them personalized messages and really get more granular than you might be able to otherwise. So that's, I'd say, the first way to personalize is with subscriber data and insights. And then the second way is by personalizing the messaging and the conversations that you're having with your subscribers. So text messaging as a forum, it's two-way. When you think about how you use it with your friends, your family, you're texting back and forth, you're sending, but you're also receiving and vice versa. And that's, that holds true with text message marketing. And I think that's something that we at Attentive really, really, really want to kind of capitalize on and leverage to make it the best and most personalized experience for, a brand subscribers. So we just launched something called Attentive Concierge fully, so it's available, and it is a way that you can actually, send those personalized messages back to a subscriber from a brand. So essentially, it's a team of live agents who powers human-powered messages, and they'll send via SMS. So if a subscriber responds to your brand and says, "Hey, what size should I buy?" or, does this run small? The live agent would then respond to that conversation via SMS and just really assist the customer and I think ultimately just make their experience a lot better, which is so important during the holidays when the customer, again, may not be familiar with your brand and your product. And so, yeah, I think that's another way that you can really personalize the experience for a subscriber.
So I find that concierge product super interesting as the procrastinating shopper myself, right? I could see myself sending like a help message, help, I have 3 days left.
Totally. What do I buy?
Cool.
Yeah.
Margaret from Attentive, let's stay with you. Next question. How do you create so we're talking about customer experience, right? How do you create a frictionless customer experience this holiday season? Maybe some more examples.
Yeah, I mean, it's true during the holidays, I think year round, but again, holidays matter. And it's all about optimizing the mobile shopping experience and kind of removing the steps from a customer's path to their purchase. So what's really interesting is the majority of shopping is happening on mobile, and we know that's true, but the majority of conversions are not happening on mobile. Those are still happening on desktop. And so I think we see there's an opportunity, there's a gap. And, at Attentive, we're like, okay, how can we create products and solutions to sort of bridge that gap and make the mobile shopping experience better and, just better for the customer. So I think the first way, and I just touched on this, but is with Attentive Concierge, which I'm very excited about, especially with the holidays. It really centralizes a subscriber's experience on mobile and makes it have a lot less friction. So essentially, by assisting a subscriber where they are, you are, reducing the need for them to switch browsers, switch tabs, all of that, switch devices. It's just a lot easier. And so their experience is just more centralized in mobile, and it's easier for them to then make a purchase or decide, okay, I want to go on to purchase this. And ultimately, I think their entire experience with the brand is better because you are able as a brand to proactively manage their expectations. If they're able to reach you for assistance, they know that something runs small, they can ask, versus having a bad experience where later on they receive the product and it doesn't fit or whatever it is. So I think that's one way, especially during the holidays, that'll be really key, to reduce friction in the mobile shopping experience. The second way, and this is really, really neat and kind of playing on that same thing, but moving a little bit further down the purchase path, is allowing a mobile shopper to purchase via SMS. So again, reducing that friction of them having to switch browsers, devices. I know for myself, I'll be looking on mobile and shopping, and then I go to desktop because it's a lot easier to type in all my information, and sometimes I don't even make the purchase, right? So we just launched our text to buy solution at Attentive. Essentially, it is powered with Shopify's Shop Pay checkout flow, and what it does is it allows a previous Shop Pay customer who's an SMS subscriber to respond to a brand via a text message conversation and initiate a purchase. And it sort of autofills all their previous information from Shop Pay, again, reducing the friction and allowing the sort of the entire purchase path to be centralized in one place. So I think that's another way, especially with holiday, that we can kind of optimize that mobile shopping experience for our customers.
Might be a little too easy for me to shop at that point. That's
I know,
a little
right? It's dangerous. I agree.
Margaret Gorin with Imperity. Yeah, frictionless customer experience. Any thoughts there about how Imperity sort of helps there?
Yeah, I love this. As a consumer myself, and being in this space, I can't tell you how frustrated I get when I have those moments of frustration as a buyer, especially at my favorite brands where things just kind of break down. I love this idea of the concierge service. Really, like, I think personalization, folks always think about the outbound stuff. Oh, how do we personalize email? How do we personalize our ads?
Right.
Personalizing
100%.
the really high touch experiences is where you take a customer that was just kind of like lukewarm about you and you turn them into a total champion of your brand. And we actually see this in the data, right? So we see customers who have higher NPS scores, right? Net promoter scores. When somebody goes from a detractor to a promoter, if we look at the data, their CLV will go up on average by about 23%. And even if you just take somebody who was, again, lukewarm, sort of a passive, and get them to be a promoter, you'll see their CLV go up by about 12% on average. So there is actual dollar impact to creating these kind of frictionless experiences. And when I think about, as a consumer, again, using something like that concierge service, wouldn't it be amazing if as I'm talking with that concierge, they know all of the data about me, right? They have my full purchase history. They know, what I like to browse, how I interact in different channels. And now that conversation is just absolutely, one-to-one personalization experience, right? And so that's really where we start to think about, again, hydrating every single touch point, whether that's an Attentive for Concierge, whether that's your customer support or call center platform. And we've seen some really great examples of this with our brands, where those agents are now equipped to have much richer conversations with their customers because they're looking at the full kind of C360 view.
So it totally makes sense to me. I don't know how many times, or I've had many experiences where I reach out to a brand, I've got a question, I have a problem, whatever that might be, and I feel like whatever channel I'm reaching out into, I have to explain to the brand like who I am, what I've purchased, and I've got to sort of like tell that history of me when honestly they should probably know that, right, up front, and then we can kind of get to the result that I'm looking for a little bit faster. So that's great, really highlighting that a frictionless customer experience requires you to actually know who your customers are and all of those customer-facing platforms. We'll go to our next question. Margaret, from Imperity, let's go back to you. Many customers tend to use the holiday shopping season as an excuse to actually head out to those brick and mortar stores, right, for that real holiday shopping experience. What are some best practices for positive experience for those customers who are interacting not just online, but now also offline in stores?
Yeah, so I'm a great example of this. Like last year, I actually went to a mall. I went to the mall near my house because I didn't know what to buy. And when you're more casually browsing, you want to just go to a mall and go from store to store and see what's there, and and buy different things when you see them. But what we do see in retail is one of the biggest breakdowns in terms of data happens between online and offline data, or POS and e-com data. It's really hard for a lot of brands to connect the dots on this. And brands now have things like loyalty programs, and that's a kind of key way that they try to track customers shopping both online and offline. But we know that customers will sometimes forget to use their loyalty number, for example. We definitely see situations where folks will open multiple loyalty accounts, either knowingly or unknowingly. And so being able to connect those dots is super important, and it's not simple, right? Because I'll just give you an example. I'm Margaret Gorin now. I used to be Margaret Feinberg. I changed my last name when I got married, and I use different credit cards. I use different email addresses. I use different mailing addresses. And so you really need a sophisticated identity resolution solution that can look across all of those different pieces of information and intelligently figure out that that's the same person. And the reason that's important is going back to the question on how do you create that positive experience for those customers. Customers notice when there's not that consistency in their experience when they're crossing from online to offline channels, especially your best customers, right? If I'm spending lots of my money with you, if you're getting a lot of my wallet share, I don't want to feel like you have no idea that I came into your store yesterday when I potentially go online, or vice versa. So great example, if you're giving me a VIP offer online, I expect to be treated like a VIP when I'm in the store, right? Or if I've been given some sort of other kinds of discounts or promotions, I want to make sure that I'm still able to take advantage of that. And then I want to make sure that future experiences after that brick and mortar experience, I can tell that you have connected the dots, right? Again, between those different channels.
Awesome. Margaret Messner, any thoughts?
Yeah, well, I just want to say now I want to go to a mall. I'm like being triggered from so anyway, but yeah, no, I totally agree that ultimately the goal is to reach a shopper where they are, and then to drive them to purchase where they prefer to purchase, whether that is in a mall, if you're me right now, or online. And that does require actually identifying who that subscriber is, and who that shopper is. So I think the first thing I'll say, as far as reaching subscribers where they are, that for SMS can look like just, leveraging a wide array of capture tools. So on your site, obviously you're going to capture people who are online, but having a lot of offline capture tools. So like text to join is a good example. We've probably all seen it where it's like text holiday to 12345 for 10% off, whatever it is. That's a text to join keyword. Leveraging that in store, right? And that's a way to capture people who are brick and mortar shoppers and to get them to sign up for your SMS program. So I think that's one way, and one thing I want to call out, especially for the holidays, that can be really effective. Something else that you can do then with SMS messaging to actually drive the customer to purchase where they prefer to purchase is, I think, segmenting based on, as Margaret said, previous data. What can you see about that shopper? The Amperity data that you can pull in with the integration is an awesome way to do that. Geo segmenting or geo targeting is another way. If you have a brick and mortar store, maybe creating a segment of shoppers who are within 20 miles or whatever the radius you want to use is, and then sending them personalized messaging about the nearby store. I think ultimately the last thing I do want to call out with SMS, messaging during the holidays is it can really drive a lot of value for high intent shoppers, especially just because, demand is pretty high for those people, and inventory might become tight, and they might have a product that they're really interested in. And so I think in those ways, they might be a little bit, like more flexible in terms of where they purchase. Maybe it's someone who normally purchase online, but they really want a product, and so if it's in store and it's out of stock online, they're willing to do it. And I think that's a way that you can use SMS to drive value during the holidays, especially is things like back in stock triggers or price drop for your high intent subscribers, sending them to nearby locations if that's relevant, but kind of mixing and matching the locations where someone goes just during the holidays, I think probably has a little bit more success, as people want the products.
So I like that too, right? So help guide me, brands. Let me know that something's available in the store, so I'm just not like a zombie walking through the mall, 2 or 3 days before that I'm due to give the gift. So great. So if we summarize what I heard, obviously super critical: meet your customer in the channel they prefer, inform them of their options. Properly personalize your messages and your offers, and using all of that available first-party data for that sort of best-in-class brand experience. So that brings us to our next question. While the brand is in holiday and sort of systematically executing this strategy day by day, is it too late to make changes? Right? Can you pivot while you're in the moment? So Margaret from Amperity, what are your thoughts there about pivoting in holiday?
Yeah, actually, one of the things that Margaret just mentioned was, I think, a great example of a reason why you might need to pivot, right? Inventory. If there are certain items that you're sold out of, or maybe you have slow sellers. Now, it's tough to change your actual inventory buying and allocation, right? There are only so many brands that can move that fast, maybe like the Zaras of the world. But there are definitely things you can do in the season to respond to those kinds of in the moment changes, right? So for example, if you have slow sellers during holiday, if you have a segmentation and customer data platform like an Amperity, we can tell you who the audience is that is has the strongest affinity for that slow seller, so that you can launch a sort of last minute push around that product to those customers. And so it's really about having the infrastructure in place to be able to support more of that agile or nimble approach, right? If you have legacy infrastructure, it's not easy to actually pull that audience and know who that audience is. It could take a week or more, and then deliver that audience to the channels where you want to be messaging those folks. And in Amperity, that would take a matter of seconds, minutes, right? Other things that you could do, you know, kind of when you have the right tools in place. For example, your paid media, we talked about paid media earlier on, your paid media spend allocation. While you're in holiday, if you have sort of that low latency real-time signal coming in, that there are certain channels that are outperforming in terms of maybe they're bringing in really high AOV customers, right? Or high average order value customers. You could certainly shift budget more from one channel into another, you know, based on those signals that you're seeing. If you have the infrastructure with something like an Amperity to be able to run A/B tests on different offers or messages and see which one is outperforming, is it 10% off or is it $10 off? Is it free shipping or is it some sort of free gift, right? You can see which one is outperforming, and if one of them is doing better, great. Let's just put everybody into the free gift one if that's outperforming free shipping. But again, the key is having timely and accurate data to be able to look at this hour by hour, day by day, and then having that connected tech stack so that you can actually action on those changes.
Totally makes sense, right? You can't wait a week for the answer and pivot a week later. You need to pivot that day, really. Margaret Mester, Attentive. What do you think?
Yeah, well, I think SMS is the channel through which, you know, if you have that data, you know, through Amperity, that sort of like first party data, it's the channel through which you can then disseminate those changes. So I think they play nicely together for this purpose. I think, you know, SMS is the channel that we're all on. It's reach subscribers where they are, where they want to be reached. I think because people are so engaged there as well, they're more likely to see a message. So if you want to extend a sale, or if inventory's out or whatever it is, you can target the people that you want to target, pulling in that data, and then send them the message, and they'll be sure to receive it. I think, you know, we do at Attentive stress the importance of planning. So I do want to put that disclaimer out. Like, planning is great. We're starting to plan with our partners right now, and and sort of solidify their holiday strategy. But you know, SMS is a very forgiving channel for last minute changes, and is the way that you can reach these subscribers. I think just being aware of a few factors that, you know, shouldn't change. One of which is really just, I think the biggest one is message send architecture through the carriers. So on the busiest days of the year, when every single brand is sending out a text, you know, you can think of the carriers as kind of like, or I guess the analogy is sort of like everyone getting onto a highway at 8 a.m., right? It's rush hour. Everyone's getting on, we're going to have traffic jams. It's kind of the same with the carriers. So I think even if your strategy changes, being sure to sort of, you know, factor in those constraints, sending at maybe some off-peak times. Instead of 9 a.m., sending at 9:12 a.m. And then also being aware that really on the big days like Cyber Monday, Black Friday, not to send messages with images. Those are heavier and they take longer just to be sent by the carriers. So being sure that with your copy, you know, even if the strategy is changing, that the copy itself is such where you're not assuming there will be an image with it, right? Because, you know, there's more likely to be delays.
That's great. Super specific tactics, right, to think about. Okay, great. Let's fast forward a little bit. Let's assume all of our brands here are listening. They're applying all of these great strategies and tips and tricks, and they've crushed their 2022 holiday. Well done. Let's celebrate. Maybe we're going to catch up on some sleep. Now we wake up. It's after holiday. What do we do? Right, we got to know that brands probably acquire a lot of first-time buyers during the holiday season that just happened. What can brands do to kind of ensure that those first-time buyers come back, make a second purchase, right? Avoiding that one and done customer problem. Margaret from Imperity, any thoughts on that one and done problem?
Yes, the endemic one and done problem. Everybody faces it. If your brand has a one and done problem, just know that you are not alone. It is the nature of retail that we do see these leaky buckets. Definitely during holiday, you'll see that potentially be exacerbated. So what I tell brands is understand that a customer's first purchase is often different than what I would think of like as a higher replenishment repeat purchase, even outside of holiday, right? I think of it almost like your gateway drug to the brand. The first thing that you buy will likely not be the thing that you end up buying all the time. That is especially true during holiday. Again, remember going back to the example I gave in the beginning about the fact that during holiday, I might not even be buying for myself. I'm probably buying for other people. If you want me to come back a few months later, you need to pivot the way that you're personalizing to me, because my gateway purchase, which was a gift, is going to be different than when I'm purchasing for myself. And so the trick with that is, if you want to be able to understand what I'm most likely to buy next, you can't just be going off of my historical purchase behavior, right? If you're just saying, oh, what has Margaret bought in the past? Menswear. Let's keep sending her menswear offers. That is a really poor experience. This is where having predictive modeling becomes really, really helpful, because what we can do at Amperity is say, yes, maybe Margaret made her first purchase in menswear or in accessories during holiday as her first purchase, but hey, she actually looks like all these other customers that made a similar first purchase during a similar time of year in a similar channel in a similar category, but they ended up going on to buy women's wear. And so now we can predict what that product affinity is going to be going forward.
Margaret, other Margaret?
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah. Well, I think this is another example of where just conversational text messaging can just make sure that with a first-time buyer, someone who's new to your brand, that you're engaging them. I think the more likely someone is to engage with the brand, the more likely they are to remember the brand and come back. So that's one way. Just, the conversation piece is really important. I think another thing you can do with SMS is really use it to bridge different channels. So I think, I've seen people do this really successfully, where they will, in a post-purchase flow or something like that, or even a welcome flow, they'll say, hey, join our social network, and get someone to kind of join the social community as a way to kind of bridge those channels. Even featuring user-generated content of SMS subscribers, I've seen that work really well, just as a means to make them feel like VIPs, to feel really good about their purchase, and ultimately, again, to kind of bridge those channels. So I think that's another way that you can sort of, use first-time buyers and sort of, or not use them, but get them into sort of your larger network.
That's cool. Yeah, I think I've totally done that. There's some brands out there, the men's-specific brands, and after I've made a purchase, then I get, hey, join us on Instagram, and I go, look, it's actually kind of nice to see the product on, another guy and see what it looks like in different situations. So that's super cool. Let's flip this a little bit. So these are all great strategies for the one and done problem. How about customers who are repeat buyers, but they only repeat during holiday, right? So they're only shopping once per year. Are there things that brands can do to sort of coax that customer to buy outside of holiday? Margaret Gorin, what do you think?
Yeah, so this starts to get into the mechanics of lifetime value, right? What are the mechanics of lifetime value? It's your purchase frequency, right? It's your average order value, and then it's your likelihood to come back as a customer. And so you've got lots of different kinds of customers that all might have a similar CLV, but there's different underlying mechanics, right? So you have some customers who are once a year holiday purchasers, but they buy all of their gifts from your brand. And so they spend thousands of dollars and they're really valuable. Even though their purchase frequency is low, their AOV is very high. You have other customers who are purchasing all the time, that maybe are coming back 4 times a year, 5 times a year, 6 times a year. Each of those purchases is smaller, but they're higher frequency, and so it evens out, and those customers might be the same lifetime value. So the first thing I would say is, just because somebody is low frequency doesn't necessarily mean that they are low value. I would also say though that if a customer is a holiday shopper with you, especially if they've just made their first holiday gift with you, don't just automatically assume that, okay, this is one of our holiday shoppers. If that customer is looking at your brand as a place where they buy gifts, there's lots of other opportunities to buy gifts throughout the year, right? There's Mother's Day and Father's Day and Valentine's Day and birthdays. But now you can put them into that persona, that segment of gifter. And when you have those key moments in your marketing calendar, be sending them gift guides around those other key moments. And then again, I would go back to kind of the replenishment behavior, right? So maybe they act a certain way when they're gifting, another way when they're not gifting. Maybe you have products that are more high replenishment in your catalog, right? Things like if you're a beauty brand, you know, skincare, right? If you are an apparel brand, things like jeans, right? That people just keep buying over and over again. Really important to understand each customer's unique cadence and then be reaching out to them in that frequency, right? Not everybody is going to conform to a one-size-fits-all rule of lapsed. And so understanding, you know, when I'm likeliest to come back and then what that replenishment behavior looks like is really important.
That's great. Margaret at Attentive, how about getting those only holiday shoppers coming back for more?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with everything Margaret just said. Another thing that you can do through SMS is leverage our loyalty integrations. And I think that's another way just in general to get people to purchase and repurchase. Maybe those who are more likely to just purchase at a certain time of year, it's a good way to incentivize them to purchase at other points. So we have a lot of integrations with different loyalty vendors, and it's really neat. Essentially, you know, I've seen brands do a lot of different things with it. Something that's cool is if you have a tiered loyalty program, maybe a subscriber is close to hitting the next tier, and so sending them or triggering a message to them saying, hey, you know, purchase XYZ to get to the next tier or whatever it is. There are a lot of different event-based triggers with, you know, your loyalty program that we can customize and we can then use to drive additional purchases, maybe at times when, you know, that aren't the holiday, when they might not otherwise be as likely to purchase.
That's great. Again, action-packed with tips and tricks. And I know we had some, so we're gonna move on. We're gonna go to our live Q&A. We had some questions that came in. So let's start off with our first question. This is for Attentive, so Margaret from Attentive. If we're just getting started on our SMS journey, do we have enough time to get started with Attentive or another SMS tool? So could you get going now?
Yes, absolutely. I think SMS is a really easy channel to implement, sort of the beauty of it. I think the biggest thing being the phone number from which you're going to send messages, which at Attentive we help you procure and all of that. We do it for you. But right now is a perfect time actually to get started with SMS. Enough time before the holidays, again, to do those things like growing your subscriber base, sending messages, etc. You know, I'd say the latest, we've launched brands all the way into November, like middle of November. Now, to Margaret's point earlier, I don't necessarily know if that would be my recommendation. Like the sooner you can do it, the better, absolutely. But we can do it, and we've seen a lot of success because you also don't want to discount the increased site traffic during the holidays that is coming to your site, right? And that's a good way to capitalize, or leveraging SMS list growth tools is a great way to capitalize on that time of year and really build your subscriber list. I want to say last year, like across the board, we captured 8.5 million new subscribers during Cyber Week for all of our brands. So like there's a lot of list growth to be done. So yes, while I would say now is a perfect time, get started sooner rather than later, I don't want to discount that if you do want to get started with Attentive closer to the holidays, I don't want to discount sort of the benefits of getting started before then. So yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, I think so. I think that was a great answer. Let's see. Let's move on to our second question. So Margaret from Parity, what are some key metrics we should be tracking during holiday to measure our success? Obviously, we're watching our daily sales activity, but what else should we be monitoring? I think that's a great question too.
Yeah, I love this question. customer metrics, right? And so you want to be able to look at things like what is to be able to track things like customer lifetime value on a cohort basis. So what is the average CLV of a customer that we brought in during the holiday cohort this year versus last year? What's the kind of percentage growth? And then remember, I broke down the levers of CLV and really understanding, hopefully that CLV is going up year over year. What exactly is it? Is it that customers are adding more items? Is it more items per order? Is it a higher price point per item? So is that AOV going up? And if so, why is it? And on the flip side, is it going down? And if so, why is it? You want to look at things like, do we have customers who are actually making multiple purchases during holiday season? Is there a frequency element to this as well? And then if you're using predictive models, you can actually look at the predictions about that cohort and see what is the predicted likelihood of repeat purchase of the customers that we're bringing in. So are we bringing in customers who are likely to be repeat customers versus customers who are likely to be one and done customers. So definitely those customer metrics, but then, you know, really simple things. And these are things that even some of the most sophisticated brands in the world have a hard time doing that we help them do, is how many new customers do you have? How many overall unique customers do you have? You'd be amazed how many brands cannot answer that question because they don't have the data together, they haven't deduplicated it. And if you want to know how many new customers you've brought in, you have to know that they're not actually a repeat customer and deduplicate that. And there's not sort of a secret sauce or benchmark to say, hey, you know, what percentage of new versus returning, but you definitely want to be making sure that you have kind of a healthy mix of folks who are retained customers who are coming back to you versus new customers as well.
That's great. I'm watching the clock here, and so we're actually out of time for today. So those folks who did submit questions and we didn't get to those questions, we're going to provide you with a follow-up. So be on the lookout for that. I'm super grateful for Margaret Gorin and Margaret Mester to join me from Imperity and Attentive. This is absolutely packed with content. I'm Brian Shumsky with Imperity. May you all crush your holiday season and have a wonderful rest of your day. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Thanks.
Thanks for having me.